And welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the High Low Sports Podcast. We appreciate you all for joining us here on this Wednesday evening to talk about what is going on in the wide world of sports. It is DJ, joined as always by my co host, Kelcey. And Kelcey, it's a pretty much about that time of the year where it gets a little bit of fun. We get to get a little bit creative. On top of that, it's quite a surprisingly good amount going on here as we exit May and enter into some people call the summertime blues, but that all depends who you're talking to. I think we got a pretty good week in the world of sports coming up and some surprising changes potentially on the horizon.
Yeah, I'm not going to call it the greatest time because I feel like, again, like I said last week, I think we do that almost every week. But
Mm.
it is a fun time for me for sports. I am a big baseball fan, so the dog days of summer hit. You get into that stretch where, well, now we're in the approaching College World Series. By the way, shout out Birmingham Southern for what they're doing right now. If you guys don't know, D3 Championship, and their school shuts down on Friday. Amazing. So they're playing for a school that doesn't exist come this weekend. By the way, up here in the Cleveland area, so cool thing. Um,
Very interesting.
but then, yeah, baseball's here. You have basketball rounding out its playoffs. We're getting close to the finals now, but very, very close to the finals now. And WNBA. Look, I'm still a WNBA fan. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'm long before the days of Caitlin Clark. I'm back to the Becky Hammon with the Silver Stars. If anybody remembers the Silver Stars, I bet you most people don't even know who I'm talking about. But it's okay. It used to be the Utah Stars, by the way, before that. And yeah, no, soccer, everything. You get close to the Summer Olympics as well. So we're having a good time right now.
Yeah, absolutely as well too. We got a lot to get into. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump right into the first part of the show. That is, of course, the tip off. The tip off brought to you by our friends over at SeatGeek. Use code Sports. Get yourself $20 off your first set of tickets for any sporting event, whether it is that WNBA game or a baseball game or anything in between. Code Sports gets yourself $20 off your first set of tickets. And it's the NFL offseason, which normally means there's not a lot to talk about, but we're gonna talk about the offseason, but not in the way that you normally talk about the offseason. There's some potential changes on the horizon. And in case anyone couldn't tell, we're talking about the offseason. So the NFLPA working to finalize will be a little bit of an overhaul program, and just kind of the nuts and bolts of it as well as there's going to be it's going to like right now the offseason program starts in like the mid-April, runs through June, then you take a break, then training camp, and that stuff kind of kicks off in July. We all kind of know the rules because then during that time is when we're going towards preseason, and all we're saying is counting down towards the regular season. Well, now they're kind of looking at it, and since they started doing that, a lot of people have accredited injuries to doing that because your body doesn't get to callous. The training camps are a lot shorter, a lot less hitting. I think there's only certain padded practices, that sort of thing too. So it looks like part of that is they're going to try and restructure it so that you can kind of break up that calendar a little bit and move it forward. So it'd be maybe longer training camps, a longer ramp up period before the start of the season. So there wouldn't be those OTAs like right after the draft in May, June, like we're seeing right now. They'd have that time off, then they'd start training camp earlier in the summer, slowly ramp their way up, slowly work their way into it. Basically, they're trying to play the long game. You'd have that Cancun time right afterwards to go a little bit longer before OTAs, and then you'd get right into the season. So, I'm gonna open up to you before I jump into it. I'm curious. Obviously, there's more that goes into it than what I just laid out. I threw the bare stuff, nuts and bolts. I threw the sandwich with zero condiments on it there just to kind of get the right idea for it because there's a lot of weird language that I'll go into. But what are your thoughts on that as you think about the idea of maybe ramping it up slow into the season to get yourself to the padded practices and into the regular season hitting as opposed to kind of what we have going on right now?
I like the idea. You mentioned injuries being a big cause of it, which is true. I do think injuries are going to play a part, especially some of the not the major ones. Maybe not. We're talking like ACLs, things like that. Maybe not those, but like those calf injuries, those back injuries, those things like
Observation, yeah.
that. The smaller nagging injuries that last for throughout a season. Joe Burrow injuries, basically. Not talking about his torn knee from Chase Young, but the other injuries. It definitely makes sense that would be the case. If you think about any time you work out, you run, you go play pickup basketball, every time you sit, you kind of have to get back up and stretch again. While you're working out in the beginning of the spring, taking another month and a half, 2 months off, and then going back for a month and a half, and then ramping up to full speed after that month and a half, never really made sense to me, to be honest. But I will also say players will have to get used to it. It's not different. Like the current schedule is not different than what they dealt with in college in a lot of ways, where you had the regular season, then you immediately go into spring ball, and then you take your break. I just always felt like they took a break for the playoffs, for teams that don't make the playoffs or teams that don't make the Super Bowl, and then you take another month off, and then you're at OTAs. And that was always a little weird to me. So I don't hate this idea. I think it's very interesting. I do think, injury conversation wise, I think it's really helpful. It's no different than soccer does. If anybody knows how the European soccer schedule works, it goes from training camp starts end of July, beginning of August. Games start end of August. Well, sometimes the middle of August, or sometimes they start earlier in July if they have a summer tour in the U.S. But then they get 2 months off at the end of the season. The end of the season is usually mid-May. They usually get 2 months off, especially your bigger players. They get more time off depending on international schedules and whatnot. But they still give them that compensation for the time. So I don't hate the idea. And look, I'll be honest. I don't think I see as many major knee injuries in soccer as I do in football. And I'm not talking collision injuries. I'm talking non-contact injuries here. And we're talking about guys who make crazy cuts for a living on soccer and run all day, and they're going without these major injuries. So maybe there's something to be said about it. I know runners kind of talk about doing the same thing, especially training for marathons. They do a ramp-up time instead of a intermittent, like we ramp up, slow down, ramp up. So they don't do that. They go slowly, 5K, 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 13.1, and then the big day. That's kind of the method of madness there. And then they take a break, and they start back over again when they're ready to start training again. Fighters, same thing. I believe you might have to correct me on that one, but I feel like a lot of sports do the same method, so it makes sense. From
Like the goal is to kind of like peak on competition day, especially for like fighting, that sort of thing too. But then again, you're only performing one night, so you basically get it so that week you're the best possible you could be. So I think there's a lot of similar correlation here, and we kind of you touched on it as well too. You can't really just go like in, out, in, out, in, out, and then like jump into a training camp where you're going, what is it, like 4 weeks now, something like that, with very limited contact. It's mostly just like knocking the cobwebs off. So I think this is a good idea too. You're gonna have probably more people come into training camp out of shape, but I think the ramp up period lets you get in shape during it. I know on a much, much smaller level, like when I was playing, I would sometimes come in a lot of shape, but those early ramp up periods, since we played when there was like 2 days in the 900-degree heat, that like it was able to kind of work your way into it. So
especially
by
down
the time,
south.
oh yeah, that humidity too, my goodness. So I think there's something to be said for it. People are going to get hurt no matter what, especially those fluky ones. People are going to fall awkwardly. They're going to randomly cut and twist. It's going to happen no matter what. The goal is to try and mitigate it by 1%, because a lot of them, there's nothing you can do. Athletes are way too overdeveloped as far as muscle density, speed, athleticism, like it is beyond what humans should be. That they should not be running 22 miles an hour into each other. They're scientific marvels at this point at the highest level, with all the training programs, professional sports medicine, everything like that, sports sciences. So there is no way to prevent injuries in that type of sport. There's really no way. Beside even flag football, people will get hurt. People will be mad. Like there's no way to avoid it when you're that big, that fast, and running into each other. But if you can mitigate it 1% like this, and mitigate those ones like just the goofy ones, I guess I think that could go a long way. So I'm all for it. Why not? Like it's worth a try at this point. It's better than saying, well, you can't tackle this way anymore. That hip drop hurts. That doesn't exist, but we're going to make up rules to try and. So I digress. I won't go into that tangent. We've made an episode on that tangent, but I'm all for it. At this point, why not give it a try? And it's probably better for the rookies too. Like they get drafted, they don't immediately walk into a rookie OTA, take a break, normal OTA, take a break. It gives that a little bit, especially those deep playoff teams too. Like the Niners, the Chiefs, those teams that get in there, it gives you a bit of a longer cushion because you're playing extra 3 to 4 games than everyone else too. So this kind of makes up for that a little bit. So I'm all for it. I like the idea. Worst case scenario is you go back to something else if it doesn't work. But why not give it a try at this point?
And just so everybody's clear on what's happening. So the current offseason workout program is collectively bargained, by the way. So going through their CBA with the PA. It's a voluntary 9-week offseason program broken down into 3 phases, which include meetings in phase 1, on-field individual drills in phase 2, and organized team activities in phase 3. Teams conduct 1 mandatory minicamp for veterans during phase 3. For most clubs, this offseason program starts in mid-April and runs through mid-June, and then a roughly 6-week break lasts until training camp kicks off in mid to late July. So for veterans, since they can't really start until phase 3, in mandatory OTAs. I mean, obviously they could probably do it before if they wanted to, but for that case, they're not really starting their workouts until the beginning of June. They just took off until from who knows when their season ended, somewhere in January, February, and they took off until mid-June, took a break after that 3-week period in mid-June, and then came back at the end of July. That doesn't seem very smart to me. Obviously, we'll have to see what happens with the CBA negotiations with the new PA in charge and everything. But I do think top to bottom, I think this would be a better option. Supposedly, this one would start mid-June to early July for the early training camp, and then immediately run into fall training camp.
Yeah, I'm all for it at this point. Give it a try. Maybe people have more time in the offseason to heal up if they need it. They got more time to work their way into training camp shape per se, like more time to ramp up that, even if there's someone who gets a little bit out of shape in the offseason. There are some foodies and it's a lot of money. You got to spend that sometimes. So I get it.
Yeah.
But
Poor
and on
Grover
top of that,
Stewart,
though. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
no wings for him for that 8-week period.
Hold on. That's the fuel that makes him great now. Like, that's okay. Like, he just fewer wings.
It's a good thing Josh Bynes retired. I don't think Body Built by Taco Bell flies in that type of in the new projected type of fall season.
Not with that attitude, it doesn't. But I also want to point out too, one of the weird underrated just things for some of us as regular sports fans too is this won't be like, oh, he didn't show up to voluntary OTAs. Does this mean there were contract disputes? He's not showing up, and then we missed the. It's all right. You're in training camp or you're not at that point, basically. And so I think that's just the nice the mitigation of a little bit of drama there. It gives more time to work on those contract deals and that sort of thing too. Which small thing, not what it's intended for, but you know what? Silver linings if you can find them in there. So there's whatever you can do, we can do to mitigate injuries. But unfortunately, speaking of those injuries, yeah, no matter what they're going to happen, no matter what sport you are playing. So we're going to go to a different field. We're going to go to the baseball diamond, and unfortunately, one of the biggest names in MLB is going to be out for the season. Is Ronald Acuna for the Braves. He is out for the season with a torn ACL. A very, very rough start for the Braves, a surprisingly rough start overall. And now Acuna is the best player, arguably, in the NL as well, too, and their best player. Now, we'll discuss it. Are the Braves cooked? Or do you think there's a way they could work their way around it? Because it's not like they were world beaten before he got hurt either.
I don't know if they're cooked, but man, this is a tough blow. First, you have Spencer Strider go out, and Max Fried missed a little bit of time. Ozzie Albies missed a little bit of time. Now you have your all-world center fielder and potential MVP candidate out for the season. Things don't get easier. That's for sure. Second in the National League right now. You're looking at still a really good record. Still a 10-game win, 10 games above 500. I guess technically 5 games above 500 if you want to get technical about it, because if they lost them, then whatever. But yeah, they have 10 more wins than they have losses. Looking at the third best record in the NL. So it doesn't look bad. And then you dive into the stats and you're like, well, we lost our top 5 guy in literally everything. Statistically speaking, and that's not going to help anybody. I mean, honestly, if he could pitch, I'm pretty sure he'd be top 5 in their pitching statistics this year. But it's tough already when you have the Phillies playing as well as you do in that NL East. I don't know if it's going to make it better. Sometimes you see this with teams, though. Their superstar goes out, and the way baseball gods seem to move the ball around, they go on a win streak. And you're just always left questioning, like, well, how good is he really? That's the stop. Ronald Acuna is one of the best players in the league. This is not one of those conversations. This is purely like, I honestly don't know. Their backups are good. It's a good young team, top to bottom. But you lose your leadoff hitter or 3 hitter, depending on where he's hitting for the night. You lose one of your best defensive players as well. I don't know if you can recover from that long term. You still have great hitters. Not taking anything away from you, but yeah. And formally, I would like to apologize to all Atlanta Braves fans for absolutely nothing, despite holding all of your players that have gotten injured that I just rattled off. I don't feel bad at all because you did enough damage to the San Francisco Giants in the 90s. So.
You know what? That makes 100%. Maybe this was your comeuppance is what it was, but I also want to talk about too. There's a lot of rumors that they might be looking to maybe make a trade to fill that void a little bit, with some names being floated around there like Tommy Pham, Taylor Ward, Brian De La Cruz, especially since the Marlins seem to be selling a little bit as well. So there are some options that they do want to go that trade route. And on top of it as well, I think it wouldn't be as worrisome, I guess, if the Phillies weren't also one of the top records in baseball right in their division. Like, they basically flipped what it normally is. Normally it's the Phillies kind of treading water while the Braves run away. This year they decided to flip it. So of course they decide to flip the script, and Acuna ends up missing the season too. So I'd say their World Series chances are all but cooked, but then making the playoffs, I mean, a good team maybe winning a playoff series. Yeah, you can't really rule them out. They've been the pinnacle, one of the pinnacles of success for what the last 5, 6, 7 years or so. So I
Yeah.
mean, I can't rule them out from at least being a playoff team. But I feel like them getting to a World Series and winning a World Series, good luck at that point. Like without Acuna, it's hard enough with Acuna. Now you take out your best player. I mean, good luck going head to head with the Orioles or the surprisingly good Yankees or some of those teams out of the AL or in the NL in your own division, like we talked about the Phillies and some of them. So I don't want to say cooked, but like the pan is warm and the oil is sizzling. Like it's
Yeah.
getting there. Like they are seasoned. Like it's in the sink.
The-
The seasoning is applied and it's soaked in.
You're just waiting on the oil to get to the smoke point at this point in time.
You're waiting for the first smoke alarm to go off.
Yeah. No, you mentioned trades, and I do want to, talk about those for a second because you mentioned one that I don't think will happen, but that's just because I don't think the Marlins are stupid enough to trade within their division, which is Brian De La Cruz. But if they are stupid enough to do that, yes. If you're the Braves, do that immediately, 10 times over. Also do that for my fantasy team. That'd be great. I'd greatly appreciate it. Tommy Pham, that guy, I'm shocked that he's having such a great year considering everything. He's been kind of a journeyman the last couple of years. So if he goes somewhere, I don't know if he'll continue to perform. On the flip side, Taylor Ward from the Angels and Brent Rooker from the A's also being looked at for him. I like the idea of going with Taylor Ward, younger than Brent Rooker. Also, he won't qualify for free agency until 2026, so after the 2026 season. So you get some time with him. So depending on how long this takes with Acuna, if he's not back fully ready by the start of the season next year, well, you still have a fill-in center fielder or fill-in outfielder for him. On the flip side, Rooker being older, probably a rental for the year. Granted, he definitely made last year's All-Star game with comfort. So you're talking about an All-Star outfielder. Last one, Jesse Winker with the Nationals. Again, don't really trust him, but so be it. Yeah, I mean, I don't also think that's going to happen. I don't think teams are stupid enough to trade within division to the Braves of all teams. So Nationals, the Marlins, no chance. But if they are dumb enough to do so, I'm not here to stop them because it just means more entertainment for me, I guess. More Braves for me to pick up on my fantasy team that get injured.
You know that we're gonna change your team. You're gonna change your name to the Atlanta Infirmary Room at this point. Like it's getting pretty rough out there. But
Atlanta General.
that's a good one. You should really consider doing it. That one. I like that one.
Thought about it.
But anyway, so that's something to keep an eye on too. Be sure to let us know down in the comments below if you think the Braves are cooked, or if you think there is a chance that they can still right the ship and get it going, or if they do make a big trade. But talk diamond. We're now going to head. Speaking of diamonds, we're going to talk about UFC 302, which features a guy with the nickname of the Diamond. It is the return of Dustin the Diamond Poirier, fighting for the lightweight belt once again against Islam Makhachev. A very, very underratedly good fight card. I'm going to cruise through this one real quickly for us, just because Dustin Poirier, one of the biggest names in the fight game, could arguably be his last fight as well, too. He has already alluded to it, like, I'm not climbing the ladder again. The dude's has 50 career pro fights, 30 UFC fights. It's pretty much all but assuredly his last chance to fight for the UFC title. Take on Islam Makhachev, who's been ranked at the top of pound for pound, which is still a goofy ranking in my list, but I digress, for the last couple of years. I wanted to look at this one because it's his last shot, and he's the ultimate type of fighter. You can't ever fully rule him out. Every time he's ruled out, he has a chance to make a comeback for it. If you have a lot of money that you can throw away, it's worth thinking about. If you don't have any money to throw away, don't risk it, because the odds are pretty interesting, which we'll talk about in just a second. And then co-main event, we got a great middleweight title fight, which is, I call it the conflicts of styles. Yes, Sean Strickland, to anyone who has heard him talk, he's that one character from Grand Theft Auto that I can't remember his name, the prototypical redneck who calls himself white trash. But his entire style is jab, head movement, high cardio, high output, not necessarily devastating power, but will overwhelm you. Biggest win, obviously, over Israel Adesanya, that shook the world and won a few people a lot of money, I'm sure. Taking on Paulo Costa, who is the prototypical more muscles than he has skin fibers. That doesn't make sense. And I am sure his pee would melt the cup if it was tested. It would look like the Minotaur pee. If anyone has seen the movie Role Models, it would look like that if he got tested. Who has the ability to destroy people in one shot. But when you're that big, it is expected, big and strong and muscular. you tend to wear down over time, is a 5-round fight. So that's an interesting matchup we have there. Number 1 versus number 7 in the middleweight division. And
Can I just say, Paulo Costa might have one of the most interesting nicknames I think I've seen.
Borishina.
No, the eraser. Yeah, okay, yeah, but yeah, the eraser,
Oh
in
yeah.
English. So yeah,
But
and just given what he is, the eraser makes sense. Just like he'd erase that cup.
there's sometimes some things that just like make sense. It's just like, oh, that makes sense. It just like plug and play. It just fits. That name fits him perfectly, especially early in his career when he was just a tornado of fists and death. He's been
Yeah.
rather inactive the last couple of years, very few fights here and there. But so we'll have to see if he's still got it. But the reason I brought those up is we're just going to focus on those two. We're not going through a full preview today, but there are
We're
some
not going to talk about
pretty.
Kevin Holland,
Oh, we're
Auburn,
going to see
Alabama
Kevin.
native.
Well, hold on. We're going to see Kevin Holland right about now. Is we're going to get a preview of DJ's best bets for the weekend. That those of you who are tuning in now, you get a little bit of a surprise. But here's what we're looking at, because I think there's some interesting chances to win a little bit of money here. We're going to take the Dustin Poirier money line at plus 470. Don't bet a lot on it. Don't bet like $1,000 if you don't have it. If you're feeling comfortable, throw 5 on it, win like 25, something like that. If you got 100, win 400, something like that. Don't bet your life on it. But I like those odds with Dustin Poirier in the ultimate do or die fight for him. If you don't win the title now, you're basically going to retire without ever winning the undisputed lightweight title. And Islam Makhachev has been not inactive necessarily, but the last time he fought a true lightweight was a long time ago, because his last couple of fights have been against Alexander Volkanovski, who moved up a division, once on short notice and once for a champion versus champion fight. And Poirier has the ability to shut lights out on anybody. If he can slow down the takedowns, there's a chance. The biggest thing is he can't try and jump the guillotine. That is his ultimate weakness. Don't do it, Dustin. It's tempting, but don't do it. Speaking of Kevin Holland, we decided to add him to the parlay too, as he is the third fight on there. Auburn, Alabama native. He was actually rumored to be one of the candidates to fight the returning Nick Diaz in a couple of months, but they decided to go in another direction. I would have liked to see him and Nick Diaz, two extremely skinny guys that like to talk a little bit in there. Would have been absolutely hilarious, but we're going to take that money line at minus 290 to kind of bolster up this if we want to parlay it. Then we mentioned Paulo Costa. They're giving him a plus 5.5 spread, which means if the fight does go to decision, all he has to do is win a round. All he has to do is win a round, or if he loses every round 10-9. That would mean it's a 50-45 that covers the spread. He basically just can't get completely toasted in one round 10-8.
So
Yeah.
So you're saying it just has to go to decision.
Or he can knock him out too. If he knocks him out, then he's the only person who I can remember that has knocked him out is Israel Adesanya. So I'm saying if he survives, then you're pretty much good to cover unless Sean Strickland absolutely walks the dog with him. But the way Costa fights, you can make a case he could win those first 2 rounds and still get smoked in a decision. But he could win those first 2 rounds and lose 49-47, 49-46, some goofy numbers like that if he gets 10-8 twice later. Or it could go to a draw. Either way, 5.5 is an interesting amount of points for him. And I feel like if it goes to a decision, he will be able to not get 10-8 at any point.
Yeah.
Or if he does, he will steal at least a round to balance it out. And if it gets finished, more than likely he would be the one to get the finish. Since, as we mentioned, Strickland is a high volume blitzing guy, and Paulo Costa's got it's hard to finish that guy. It took Israel Adesanya is the only one I could think of that's done it. So we're gonna take that one in at plus more than 1,400 odds. I put down 5. You have the chance to win about $80, give or take. So there's some very interesting, fun lines on there that I'm willing to try. Maybe don't try all of them with a lot of money unless you can afford to lose. Don't bet what you can't lose.
That's 2 gallons of gas. I will take that. Or 2 tanks of gas, not 2 gallons. It might be 2 gallons of gas nowadays.
Depending on where you're getting it. Some places that might just fill up like the little container that people use to fill up their lawnmower. But UFC 302, some very interesting betting options. And we got UFC 303, the return of Conor McGregor, coming up at the end of June. We'll be talking about it closer to that as well. So very fun times in the fisticuff worlds here. We're starting to pick up a little bit of steam after a little bit of a slowdown the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's exciting. Look, as it is, I could never break down fighting like you could. So I love watching it though. That's the whole thing. I am the definition of a spectator when it comes to fighting, and it is so enjoyable for me. I get the training aspect of it. I understand how all that works. There's no way I could do it. I would get too angry getting punched in the face one time, and then so I'd lose all sort of tactician skill. So yeah, watching these guys fight is always entertaining to me because at least it's not me, and every solves your carnal nature as well.
I'd say that's the biggest thing is at least it's not me because that hurts after a while. And definitely, you know what? If you're feeling frisky, go ahead and throw some money on one of those bets. If it wins, you can come back next week like DJ, you're a genius. And if you lose, I'll go back to the don't bet what you can't afford to lose. That way, I am
Yeah.
not responsible for anyone who loses money. But
And for those who do have a betting problem, be sure to call 1-800-GAMBLER. Get assistance if you need it. Um, again, don't bet stupid. That's the
exactly.
takeaway.
Exactly, that's the biggest thing. But that's going to do it here for the tip off, which is now going to take us into Kelsey's second favorite part of every show. That is the main event. And for the main event, it is the NBA Finals almost. They are right around the corners. We do have 50% of the NBA Finals says the Celtics advanced to the NBA Finals, cruising through the Eastern Conference. I believe it was a 12-2 record, if I'm not mistaken, because they got
Yeah.
a sweep and two gentlemen sweeps. So they kind of ran through it. So we'll start there. We talked about in our preseason predictions. I like the Celtics. I picked them to win the whole thing. You like the Celtics. You had them getting to the finals. We both. Everyone was talking about Damon Giannis in Milwaukee, Embiid and the Sixers. Like I feel like the Celtics were almost underrated coming in because we almost take for granted how good they have been the last 7 years. They've been to 5 Eastern Conference Finals, I think it is, maybe even 6. 1 NBA Finals against the Dynasty Warriors, and they won 64 games. They ran away with the best record with all-time point differentials and just went 12-2 in the playoffs. I know this Pacers series was weirdly close at some points, but the Pacers are pains in the ass to play the way they run. And when they're shooting 50+% from the field like they were, or even almost 70% like they did against the Knicks, when they get hot, they are hard to deal with. They are really tough to deal with. And I know they've been basically playing for this moment the whole time. So I think the best Celtics is yet to come. I think a lot of people are underselling them a little bit because almost take for granted how good the Tatum, Jet, Brown, and that era has been. And because a lot of people just don't like Joe Mazzulla a whole lot, he does come across as kind of a pain in the ass. But
Mm-hmm.
and they shoot way too many threes for my liking. You have so many talented players, they don't all need to shoot. They don't need to shoot 50 threes a game. They could shoot 38 to 40 and get a few more backdoor cuts here and there. But I digress. They got the best defensive backcourt in the NBA, arguably, in my opinion, with Holiday and Derek White. You got arguably the best set of defensive forwards in Tatum and Brown on top of it. And then old reliable Al Horford. And Kristaps Porzingis is still expected to come back for the finals too. So
Yeah.
I'm going to say the Celtics are as good of a team that's made the finals in recent years. They've just almost taken for granted a little bit. We'll see what they do against whoever comes out of the West, the Mavericks. But I think that's going to be an incredible matchup when they get across. So I'm excited for the Celtics. I'll round it out by saying everyone wants to talk about the ease of their playoff run. Jimmy Butler obviously did not play in round 1. Donovan Mitchell missed a couple of games in round 2. Round 3, Tyrese Halliburton got hurt. What are you supposed to do? Like, you can't go donate a hamstring to Tyrese Halliburton so they could beat you at full strength. Go delay the game so Donovan Mitchell can get healthy. Like, there's not a whole lot you can do there. That's why you play to get the number 1 seed. You get the chance to get the quote unquote easier matchups all the way through there. You don't. No one talks about let me rephrase that. Not nobody. People much fewer times talk about the 2015 Warriors who didn't play a starting point guard their entire playoff run. Between Kyrie's cracked kneecap, Mike Conley's injury, I think Drew Holiday was the point guard for the Pelicans that was injured then as well, too, if I'm not mistaken. Like their entire run, the point guards got hurt as well. So it happens. So I'm going to say, I don't know. I think we're almost underselling the Celtics. Everyone's basically saying it doesn't matter who they play out of the West, they're losing. I think that's a little premature. I think the Celtics are really, really good, and we have the best to come from them.
Yeah. I think we said this when we talked about this when they were playing the Cavs. The Cavs might have gotten lucky with the 1. Really. I mean, at that point in time, you literally put everything into it, and Donovan Mitchell then got hurt. So how does that work out for you? The Pacers, they gave a valiant effort. They kept it as close as they possibly could through all 4 games, and unfortunately, you just couldn't get over the hump. I mean, they beat you by 3 twice, they beat you by 5 once, and they beat you by double digits once. Not bad by any means. It was a valiant effort for a very young team in the Pacers. Let's be very clear. Now, on the other side, the Celtics literally took game 1 for a half off.
You could really say 3 quarters.
Really, you could. I mean, they were walking around, lounging around, didn't really care, it looked like, for an entire 3 quarters. Well, I'll say a half. I'll just be safe. I'll say a half. So that way, trolls don't come at me. I deal with enough of them. But then, you still win that game by 5. You still win the next game by 11. That's crazy. And the last two games when they're without their best player, you only lose by 3. The Celtics to be able to win like that is impressive, especially without Kristaps, given how good he's been playing all year long. Did so with only 8 men in an 8-man rotation for sure, but really only 8 healthy guys to begin with. So that's also impressive. We talked about it last time. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, how good they are this season, especially these playoffs, is unfair to every team out there, and I don't care. There's nobody that athletically could really match up with them. The Pacers were the closest things that athletically could match up with them. They were just not good enough. Tyrese Halliburton, not a good enough on-ball defender, really, at the end of the day. Beyond that, without Mathurin, without him throughout most of the season and getting healthy, they had really no chance. And so this is tough break for the Celtics, or tough break for the Pacers. The Celtics getting unnecessary heat. They were going to win no matter what, in my opinion. I will say it's just like the Rudy Gobert situation in Minnesota. Even if they had a fully healthy team, the Pacers, they probably would have lost by more to the Celtics, if we're being honest. So, going forward in the Western, or whoever comes out of the West, I don't think it's going to be an easy run for them. I think the Celtics are ready. Would not surprise me to see Green and White hold up another trophy again. Just the way they're going right now. I'm also kind of hedging my bets because the Mavs also have green and white in their logo, and so do the Timberwolves, by the way. So, hedging my bets 3 ways here. You can't tell I bet a lot, do you?
You can tell I got a little bit of green and white on as well. So, that I'm all in on the hedging as well. But I think one thing that's interesting about the Celtics you mentioned is we all know how good Jason Tatum is. They talked about how they said he was having a playoffs because his efficiency numbers weren't as high. He gave you 25, 10, or actually 25, 11, and 6 throughout the whole playoffs, basically. Like, he's cooked plenty, but was not the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. That award actually went to his running mate, Jaylen Brown, who did a lot of similar things too. I think it was like 25, 5 and 5, something along those lines as well, 28. But he did it with those really nice 50% from the field, 40% from 3 shooting splits, the big 3 in game 1 to help get them to overtime. We know what he can do defensively. Offensively too, he's really rounded out his game. And I think they're playing off of each other better this year than they ever have. And I think that really helps having Drew Holiday and Derek White, guys who could play point, run the ball, actually facilitate the offense so they could actually play wing, not point wing. They don't have to be like the weird LeBron or Pacers Paul George feel, if that makes sense, where your best player, your best scorer, is also has to play playmaker for everyone else at the top of it. So I think it's the additions of Derek White and Drew Holiday have made this team and really brought out the best in Jaylen Brown. And it's going to be funny as he continues this and Jason Tatum does what Tatum does. Let's say they do get to the finals, and if they do get to that point of hoisting up the trophy, who's going to stand out? Who's going to make that run for the MVP? That's where I think it's going to be very interesting. Because I think both of these, I'm excited because whoever comes out of the West, Mavericks, seeing Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum go head to head with one of those other duos, either on the Wolves or the Mavericks, is going to be outstanding. Because I think Jaylen Brown has really stepped up his game in these playoffs, and he's finding a way to get it done under various circumstances. ISO, catch and shoot, off the ball. He very well earned this Eastern Conference MVP, 100%. That's not even saying Tatum didn't as well, but Jaylen Brown 100% earned it. And his response is funny. Wow, I don't ever win shit. I'm surprised. Like, it's exact words. So that's even better. That's awesome. And a good tip. Like, a tip of the hat to him, well deserved. And I think he's gonna come ready this NBA Finals. I think he's gonna be ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, he was dead average all Eastern Conference except for the game 2 where he gave you 40. I'm sorry. But his averages these playoffs, he's been giving you 25 points all playoffs long a game. He gave you 24, 26, and 29 beyond the 40-point game. So this in the Eastern Conference Finals was like something like 29 is what he ended up averaging, really. A little bit more than that, actually. But look, he had a great Eastern Conference Finals. But that's kind of what we said about him the entire playoffs. He's been probably their most consistent of the 3. Mm-hmm. And that's nothing against Jason Tatum. That's nothing against Derek White. They've been impressive in their own rights in games. Jason Tatum gave you 36 in 2 games. So, that's also very, very impressive. 22 in the other, 25 in the third or in the fourth game. So, he had impressive stats, Tatum did. But when you're consistent, and that always seems to be that way, especially when you play defense as well as Jaylen Brown does, nothing against Jason Tatum's defense. But I think it's safe to say Jaylen's the better defender of the 2, at least on ball. And he also ends up guarding a lot more positions than Tatum ends up, most of the times. And that's just the nature of Joe Mazzulla's team. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can sometimes need that second fiddle, no different than Wade and LeBron or Pippen and Jordan. They need that second fiddle to play off of defensively because it allows the other guy to take a break defensively and give you 36 in 2 of the games out of the 4. Much needed 36, by the way, because they wouldn't have won those games without it. And, so I give Jaylen Brown the credit. I'm not going to take anything away from him, but yeah, I mean, sure, you could have gave it to Jason Tatum. That's fine. I don't think anybody would have complained. I don't get why people are complaining about Jaylen Brown getting it either. He had just as impressive of an Eastern Conference Finals. And when you add in the defensive ability, that really is why a lot of guys win these awards in the playoffs. Andre Iguodala, anybody. Just throwing it out there. It doesn't take much in the playoffs to be the difference maker, but when you're being successful offensively, giving you 25 a game on average or more, and then still on the flip side of things, giving you 2 plus almost 2 steals a game and a block a game, I'm probably going to give you an award at some point in time because that's something I can just put money in the bank on. I could bet $5 on that every single night and win $6.70. Because it's going to be plus 100 odds or minus 100 odds, so you're just getting $1.70 back. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It's going to be interesting to see if he can continue this trend. But to win a finals, you need a guy that's going to be that consistent. The Klay Thompson era, you mentioned, the best Warriors team of all time, the best team of all time for his regular season. That Warriors team in the playoffs had one consistent guy all season, all playoffs. It wasn't one guy carrying them the whole way. It wasn't like their last finals victory where they had Steph Curry going out of his mind. It was very much a consistent effort from an entire team, but then there was always the 2 guys that would drop and, go up, and then you'd have the same guy just level-headed every time. So, Celtics are good. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about that. Jaylen Brown deserves it. Give him his roses this time, and even though he still can't go left, we'll forgive him for that for one series.
You know what? It's okay. Sometimes Zach Randolph couldn't do it with his right, and he couldn't jump over a phone book, but he still carved himself out a nice career, and you could already make a case Jaylen Brown is well ahead of that trajectory as well. So
if you don't go left, guess what? You're always right.
Bingo. And sometimes less is more. And in this case, the less you have to do with it, the more you get out of it. But we spent a lot of time on the East, rightfully so, because there is still one series still going on. We're going to go out west as the Mavericks are taking on the Timberwolves. The Mavs going up 3-0, and now they currently leave 3-1 after Minnesota is able to take the last game towards the end of it. We finally got an Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns showcase game where they combined for I think it was just under 30 or 60, excuse me, is about 55 or so, something in that range. Rudy Gobert had a double-double, even though he was getting hunted a lot. We got Kyle Anderson, the slowest floater of all time in the methodically slow offensive game, but still finds a way to work. I'm just going to say the Mavericks I've already kind of alluded to it. They're probably winning the series. I mean, 155-0 evidence says they're going to win. I think the Wolves winning this one was just they weren't going to get swept. I mean, it probably ends in 5 if I had to guess. Mavericks, I feel like it's going to be the Mavericks and the Celtics, but do you give the Wolves a 1% chance? Are you willing to give them a 1% chance that they come back and win the whole thing? Or win the series, I should say.
I do think they I'd even give it a 5% chance that they could have an opportunity to come back. But here's a fun fact for you, statistically speaking. No team has ever gone a 7-game series and then come back from more than a 2-game deficit or 2 games or more of a deficit to win a Eastern Conference or Western Conference Finals. So, yeah, no chance. No chance, really, at the end of the day, but 5% chance just for shiggles and gits.
You know what? No one's come back from 0-3 before. Maybe if they want to make history, they can be the one to do it. We'll wait and see. But if they want to have a chance to do it, the first thing they got to do is Karl-Anthony Towns, you could be the 3rd best center in the game behind Hall of Famers Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic if you quit freaking fouling. Like the offseason program, they need to have his hands tied behind his back so he could practice shuffling his feet and stepping up to guard. If I see him get one more stupid foul, I'm going to headbutt a wall. I'm not even a Minnesota fan, but he's averaging like 5 fouls a game. Like he just fouled out yesterday, having the best game of the playoffs, shooting like I think almost 80% from 3 in that game. and then it was like 9 of 12 overall. And you foul out because with just some dumb fouls. Rudy Gobert, we already know, incredible help defender, off ball in the paint, eraser. Terrible when you put him on the perimeter. An absolute liability, but you can hunt him. And if you can pull him away from the paint, it's a problem. Naz Reid is awesome, but after game 1, the Mavericks are like, all right, we're not going to leave you open for 3. We will switch and we'll deal with it otherwise, but we're not doing that again. At this point, hear me out on this one, everybody. You need the Wolves kind of thrive because they have a bigger team. That's kind of the thing, is being the bigger team. Gobert's getting hunted on the perimeter. Karl-Anthony Towns can't keep his hands out of the cookie jar. You got to play both of them, obviously.
Do you?
Luka Garza season. Not at the same. I'm saying you don't have to play. I want to throw Luka Garza out there at one point. The dude swept the major college awards a couple years. I know he's in a similar vein as Gobert. He's not much of an athlete. If he hits on the perimeter, he might be in a little bit of trouble. At least, if nothing else, you're getting more fouls you could use. And you're not getting Karl-Anthony Towns and Gobert in as much foul trouble. He can shoot from the outside. He has an offensive game down low more than Gobert's one-handed attempt at rebound / mostly just kind of slaps the ball out and hopes somebody else gets it. The occasional flip back dunk. I'm just saying, I think they might have to consider suiting him up and throwing him out there. The Mavs are without Lively, so they're down a big man. You can really hammer home that advantage you have to. Maybe you see Karl-Anthony Towns and Luka Garza, then Gobert and Naz Reid. Like different big front courts that complement each other a little bit. Well, then you could roll with the hot hand. I hate to say that because I think Karl-Anthony Towns is that awesome, but if he can't stop fouling, it doesn't make sense because he was incredible against Jokic last series. There was a little bit of higher fouls there, but you're playing Jokic. You're going to foul. Like, that's expected. You're offensively fouling and barreling into people because they have him playing center guard at this point. He's like a shooting center 2 guard. They're having him isolate off of catch and then drive. Let him go play on the block. Let him pick and pop. Like they did use a little more of the pick and pop. Let him shoot some threes, but like I don't need him putting the ball on the floor and dribbling because once he goes downhill, he can't stop. He's not really elegant. Like most centers aren't. They're not sidestepping and flat and jumping around people. Get him one dribble in the paint, put up a move. Dribble, turn around. Like the pick and pop to where he's then driving or calling ISOs for him at the wing extended. The pick and rolls with him and Gobert, like it's sprinkle it in, but he's too many fouls. Just so if he gets to out of foul trouble, it might be a 2-2 series. But if he gets out of foul trouble and he wouldn't be forcing so many threes and then he wouldn't have such low shooting percentages. I'd say he's the 3rd best center in the game because he can be when he's not fouling or shooting too many threes. Like 3 to 4 threes a game is your hot spot. If you're feeling it, then maybe a little more. But if you're, I don't know, man. I don't know. The Mavericks are winning. I don't know why I'm spending so much time on a team that's not going to the finals at this point, but this is so frustrating.
I have been preaching this. I mean, I've been preaching it for a long time. You've joined me in preaching it the last season and a half, really 2 seasons, I'd even say.
I've always agreed, and there's just so many opportunities.
Oh, you agreed, yeah. You've agreed.
I'm more mad at the coaching staff for not actually setting him up at the same time, too. Like, yeah. What are you doing with these? You're going up
against, look, hear me out. You're going up against PJ Washington, who is a high-flying forward. You're going against Derek Jones Jr., who is a stick with pogos attached to his feet, but not strong.
A big 2 guard, basically.
Yeah. You're going against Daniel Gafford, who's, okay, sure. Again, a stick for a center. You're
really
also
good,
going
but you should be able to win that matchup.
Yes. Maxi Kleber, who came back for the first game of the playoffs today. Yeah, in game 4. And the Wolves won. But they didn't do it smart. It wasn't like you went at the right matchup here. They're not playing Dwight Powell because, for whatever reason, they don't need to. So they're playing 4 athletic forwards that are smaller. I mean, minuscule compared to anybody that plays center forward for the Wolves. I'm going to be stupid here and say that you put Anthony Edwards at the peak of a triangle and you put a fat guy down low and you put a shooter in the corner named Mike Conley, and guess what? You blow him out by 30. Guarantee. Or you put Kyle Anderson in the opposite corner. You'll be fine. I promise you. You will be okay. Just don't do this stupid, we're going to play a pick and pop game like you just said. Like, that is the dumbest thing you can do with Cat in this matchup because he is so good. He is so dynamic. He can play inside and out. And I've said it about LeBron his entire career as well. The one thing Shaq always did right is he knew when this dude's smaller than him, guess what? That dude is getting backed up under the basket and getting dunked on. Cat can back up every single one of these dudes under the basket and dunk on them if he wants to, but the offense isn't being set up for him. And on top of that, you have Gobert out there, and he's been an absolute liability since he came back from injury. You guys almost lost the last series with Gobert on the court. You're getting swept with Gobert on the court in this series, and you lucked out and you won a game by 5 points because for some reason the Mavs could only score 100. Don't get how that happened either. But you know what? I digress. Like, you got lucky.
Luka aren't going to shoot 33% in very many games. Like, that's not going to happen very often.
This really is, to me, I'm watching the dumbest offense I've ever seen from a coach who should be coach of the year, who has deserved his coach of the year. I'm still watching the dumbest offense I've ever seen, given how gifted all your team is. Ant is a fantastic playmaker. But MJ was also a fantastic playmaker. And guess where he sat in the triangle offense? At the top of the triangle, so he could act as the point guy. Kobe, the top of the triangle. And guess what? Two of the best scorers in the game and best closers in the game because they knew how to set things up. Let Ant do that. Let's see what he can do with that. It's a stupid offense that works way too well for what it should be because it is efficient and effective when you have a matchup like this. Take advantage of it if you're the Wolves. I don't get why they're not. Right now, Jason Kidd's out here looking like a genius through 4 games, despite losing the last one. He still looks like a genius. Like, I'm sorry, Jason Kidd, you're not. But then again, you are the same guy that had Giannis run into you and spill a glass of water so you can get a free timeout. So maybe you are. I don't know.
He might be onto something there, actually.
Yeah, I digress. I'm going to get off my complaints on Cat and this offense for the Wolves. But this offense has always had a problem where it has too many big men and they're not effectively used in their offense, and it's continued to show in this series, especially. Last series was great because the Nuggets also played down low. This series, when you have the opportunity to play down low and have an advantage, they're not taking advantage of it.
They were built perfectly to counter Denver, but unfortunately they weren't built to counter much else, unfortunately, unless Anthony Edwards could go superhero like he did against the Suns. Other teams could kind of put them in hell. They were just built to beat Denver. They almost kind of wish that Denver could have knocked off the Mavericks or someone else for them. I think that would have been better served if they could. Them and the Celtics would have been an interesting match because it'd be the versatile switching wings and switching perimeter players of the Celtics versus the brute force of the Timberwolves. That would have been very interesting. But it's just, I think the Mavericks are built to be just about everybody besides Denver. Yeah. And the problem is Timberwolves are not Denver, and the Timberwolves were built to beat Denver, but will struggle with a team like the Mavericks. It's that weird like circle where they beat him, but they can't beat. It's just a weird matchup.
Rock beats paper, paper beats paper beats rock. Or sorry, rock beats scissors, scissors beats paper, paper beats rock.
Exactly. And on top of that too, I can't sell short how incredible Luka and Kyrie have been, especially in this series too. Minus last night when they struggled, they shot 33 combined percent and they lost by like 3. Like that's not going to happen again. It's going to be the Mavericks in the finals. We'll talk more about it next week, just in case the improbable happens and we're talking about the Wolves. Then I will eat my words and I will say sorry to the Wolves several times next week since I said Mavericks.
I feel like we're in a Wolves apology account at this point in time if that happens.
We'll see at this point. We'll see. If they listen to what we said about utilizing the big men differently, then maybe we'll see. Like, I'm just saying, if Cat, actually, no, I can't even give Cat the benefit of the doubt. He needs to quit fouling. Once he quits fouling, then he can play minutes and the offense can run through. Keep your hands to yourself.
He's going to keep fouling because they keep trying to run the court with the Mavs. That's not. Don't get me wrong. Luka's not running past anybody except for Kyle Anderson. I feel like him and Kyle Anderson have a battle for who can run slower nowadays, and then even I would beat him in a foot race. Like, that's embarrassing.
I'm just saying, Carl, you don't need to jump when someone pump fakes. Like, just keep your slide, show your hands and slide your feet. Show your hands and slide your feet. No lunging, no jumping, no flailing your elbows, no barreling. Defensively, offensively, just quit fouling. That's all I'm asking. At that point, you never know. But I digress.
You never know.
I won't rant about the Wolves anymore. Like, they're Wolves alive, I guess, for one more game. We'll wait and see. But we'll go and talk more about that next week. We'll get the full finals preview the day before game 1 next week. Definitely looking forward to, because no matter what the matchup is going to be, it's going to be electric one way or the other with however things can play out. But that's going to do it here for the main event, which will now lead us into Kelcey's favorite part of the show, and that is Crunch Time, brought to you by Outlier. Go to outlier.bet /HighLowSports. Free 7-day trial. Bet smarter, not harder. See if you can win yourself some free money and, get a little bit of extra stats for your betting parlays, among other things. And We're gonna end a little bit of a somber note. NBA world did unfortunately lose a legend of the sport in Bill Walton this week. The Hall of Fame center, UC college superstar. I think when you talk about best players in the history of college basketball, it's like him and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar are probably the two people that you most likely think of more often than not from those UCLA dynasties. Awesome broadcaster, hilarious person, great, just no knowledgeable of the game, great coach, everything along those lines you could ask for. Sadly enough, we didn't get to see his last broadcast, which I think was scheduled to happen here soon too. They even made him and his co-broadcaster even made t-shirts about it too, joking about it. So really sad. And I do want to share this one moment that you and I got to experience a couple of years ago when the NBA All-Star game was in Cleveland. He was actually there as part of the festivities. As we got to see at the practice. Here's him having a fun. It's a question and answer game with the hometown Darius Garland. As funny as he could be, my goodness, some of the random things he had come up with. So definitely sad to see Bill Walton go there for sure. Like that's a tough one to swallow. Once again, 2024 strikes again.
Yeah, one of the best all-time college players, especially one of the best big men that probably doesn't get remembered by today's day and age. You know him as a great broadcaster, or for some people, a space cadet broadcaster. But you know what? He made it entertaining. John Madden used to do the same thing for football. As far as making the broadcast entertaining and inviting. And yes, they were sometimes really off topic, but they were really funny and really entertaining to listen to. Bill Walton on the court, though, I mean, he was dominant. Big Red, as he's known on the court. So, this is a sad day, but he thankfully doesn't have to deal with all the pain from playing his playing career. If you guys don't know, obviously he's been a long-standing proponent for player health, especially retired player health, because he is one of the guys that has been suffering the longest from a lot of pain. So you hate to see somebody go through that, and then obviously now passing away, it's even sadder. You feel for Luke and the rest of the Walton family. Sad days for them, and this sucks to lose a legend of the game, but hopefully his knees are good and he's back to dunking on people and talking about space.
1000%. One of the OG elite passing big men too. Like he was one of the first big men that made it passing elite as well. So to quote Dr. Seuss, don't smile because he's gone, smile because it happened. So hopefully everyone can kind of think about that. Speaking of which, everyone let us know down in the comment section below what your favorite Bill Walton moment is as you look back on it, whether it's playing as a broadcaster or just miscellaneous moment of him on TV being Bill Walton. That he gets his own verb as well, but it was definitely a pleasure to watch him as well. But that is going to do it here for us at the High Low Sports Podcast. We appreciate y'all for joining us here on this Wednesday evening, or if it is one of your favorite places to check out podcasts, be sure to let us know down below what your favorite Bill Walton moments are, and we will see you all again next week.